Welcome to Road to Billions Podcast, the mentality of an entrepreneur. With your host, Moise Bertrand.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Moise Bertrand, your host of Road2Billions Podcast. I'm excited to introduce a new segment to the show, Real Estate Wednesdays, with Christopher Daniels and Adrian Fyne. So all in all, I want you guys to really understand this is just our opinions, and we don't expect you to take this information and just run with it. We want you to do thorough research on every conversation we have, and just follow up if you have any questions. We're here to help everybody as well. Hit the DM. But first and foremost, I want you guys, before you get this sauce and gems, you got to do me one favor, and if you don't, I'm going to be heartbroken. Like, honestly, I need you guys to subscribe, share, review. I tell you guys that because it warms my heart. And of course, people come on the show and they get to listen and it gets shared so we can give you guys more gems. And we're going to stay tuned too also because we have different people coming on later on down the week and investing on crypto, stocks, and other things that are resourceful to you guys. So stay tuned. Appreciate you guys.
People who are what we call true real estate investors are people who want to hold properties long term, right? So when you buy a good deal, you don't want to sell it because why would you sell it? You know, it's a good deal. So in order to be able to hold a lot of properties for the long term, what you have to do is be able to refinance out of it so you can get more cash, right? So that's the strategy. So basically I can take the same 30, 40, grand or whatever, and I can buy houses continuously throughout the rest of my lifetime without having to continuously come up with more money. And that's what the BRR strategy is all about.
Okay. So is there anything different? AJ putting something up.
I was going to just to tap in. I usually look at this. This was my screensaver for a while. And he just explained it, the buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. One tip they have here is make sure you don't over leverage. Have at least 35% when ready to buy. And I think that's important, but this method here alone, I think can set you up financially, give you that financial freedom for the rest of your life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look at most of the people who are very successful in real estate, that's the way they do it. What they'll do is they will come up with a little chunk of money. They'll buy some properties with a lot of equity in it. They'll take the equity out of those properties and buy more properties and just keep going and keep going and keep going. And that's how people are able. That's why, like, sometimes people are like, well, how does this normal guy have so many houses? Like, he's like a school teacher or just, somebody like who doesn't seem like some wealthy person. It's because they're just taking money out of the houses and going from house to house to house to house to house to house to house. And they're just being consistent with their strategy. And over time, you accumulate a lot of wealth. I mean, that's how people become multi-millionaires. It's just one property at a time for years and years and years.
Do you think? I have a question. If you don't mind me hopping on this one, Mo, because kind of just piggyback off, like you said, the refinance part. When people hear that, they kind of like, and you mentioned about equity, right? Like, explain to the people, if you don't mind, real briefly on what that is. Is it just cash in the house, or is it credit when they're taking that out?
Right. So the house has a value, right? So the difference between what you owe on the house and the value of the house is what's called the equity, right? So let's say my house is worth $200,000 and I owe $100,000. That means I have $100,000 in what we call equity, right? So I can borrow a portion of that money, and the collateral for that loan is the house. Right. So I can borrow, let's just say my house is worth $200,000. I can borrow $150,000. You might say, well, why will the bank give me $150,000? The reason why the bank will give you $150,000 is if you don't pay that $150,000 back, they're going to take your $200,000 house.
Yeah.
You see? So not that they don't want you to pay. Of course they want you to pay. But I'm saying if you don't pay, then they win because now they have an even more valuable asset. If you do pay, then they win because they get the interest, right? So that's why the banks always win. But that's why banks are willing to lend money, because they have collateral, right? If I loan you money to start, a photography business, what am I going to repossess if your photography business falls through? Your cameras? I mean, how much, really, can I get from that? Yeah. But if you don't do what you're supposed to do with the house, I can take that house back and that immediately has value. So that's why you're able to borrow against it relatively easily.
So what would you recommend for someone? So can people have a house and not even never refinance that? Like, that's something like people just, why wouldn't somebody want to touch, what's the cons of refinance? Because nobody talks about that.
Yeah. So, everybody doesn't want to be in debt, I mean, so the financial education industry, is geared towards a certain demographic, right? People who want to make a lot of money right now, you know what I'm saying? So there's ways to accelerate how fast you make money. And then there's tried and true, no risk ways, right? So literally, if I just, I'll use my house for an example, right? Let's just say, look, I bought my house when I was 20 years old. I retire when I'm 50. So when I'm 50 years old, my house is completely paid for. It's worth $400,000 or whatever. I'm just throwing that number out there, right? Now I sell my house and I got $400,000 to retire, right? There's nothing that can go wrong with that scenario. You see what I'm saying? I go to work every day. I pay my mortgage every month. And then when it's paid off, it's done. And I sell my house and I make $400,000 and I retire and go live in Florida or whatever, right? Now, when you start taking out, loans against the equity and doing all these other things, then that's when things can go wrong. Because what if the value of the house goes down a little bit? What if, my job situation isn't as good as it was before? Maybe I'm not making as much as I used to, or, I get a divorce or other things like that happen. So the further in debt you are, the more risk you have, right? But what also comes with more risk? More reward, right? So because you're taking more risk, you're going to make more profit, but you should make more profit because it's more risky.
All right.
You see? So risk is relative. Risk is relative to the amount of reward, right? So for me, taking on an additional mortgage, like I did against, for example, with my house, I took on an additional mortgage to buy another property.
Right.
But if I took that, now some people do that right now. Now I'm gonna show you the difference, right? I took on an additional mortgage to buy another property. What most people do, a lot of people do, is they take on an additional mortgage to buy some Gucci, some Versace, a Lamborghini or some nicer car, a higher, or to go on a vacation, which is, of course, we want nice things in life, But what I'm saying is, the return on that, it doesn't justify the cost of taking that money out, right? Versus if you take equity out of your house and buy another home, then of course it's just multiplying, and you become much more wealthy over time. So that's the difference. So it's just about discipline.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't look at money like that. They look at money like, oh shit, I got 200, 300K on my head, but you got 5 rental properties under you. So you're really not, at that point, your property is going up in appraisal.
Yeah. So, when you look at debt, you have to look at it as, what does it cost to service the debt, right? So yes, on paper, I have millions of dollars worth of debt, but how much does that debt cost me every month? $5 or $6 grand, So if every month I can come up with $5 or $6 grand, I'm good, So that's all you got to think about, right? But you got to think, okay, so from that $5 or $6 grand, how much money am I generating? So if you're generating more than that, then you're winning every month, right? Then it makes sense to be in debt because that debt is bringing you more money, right? So that's really literally the basic fundamentals of a capitalist economy. Is basically, as long as you make more money than the money costs you, then you win.
Right. And I think it goes to the point of just understanding it's good debt versus bad debt. And that could be another topic for another day, but I think it's important for people to know the difference between the two. Because like you said, the traditional human being would buy that property at 20 and just, wait till it's paid off because it's more conservative, right? That person probably more conservative versus a risk taker. And I don't know about you all, which I'm sure we're all risk takers. So, why not? That's always been my motto. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to look at your downside. So I tell people just think of a bank, right? So I just look whenever I make a financial decision, I look at myself in the mirror and say, if this goes the worst possible way, can I live with it? Right? And if I can live with it, yeah. So okay. So the worst case scenario, worst case scenario, I lose my house and I gotta go live with my mama. You know what I'm saying? Now that's definitely not an ideal situation for a grown man. But I'm saying that's the worst. That's like the worst possible thing that can happen is me losing losing everything I got and having to go back to my parents. But so some people are like, yo, that's terrible. But however, I'm not going to be in jail. I'm not going to be dead. You know what I'm saying? So I can come back from that easily because of the knowledge that I have. You see what I'm saying? So, when you take a risk, now most people like let's just take an example, right? So I have a lot of friends who are like married and stuff like that, right? So I always advise them never do anything that's going to risk your home, your kids, your wife, stuff like that. When you single, and young, like for me, if I lose my house, it's just me. You know what I'm saying? There's nobody else here, so it's just like I'm gonna be all right. But if I had a family, I probably would take a different strategy, right? And in Florida, the good thing is about Florida is, and I'm not a lawyer, so it's not like legal advice and whatnot. But generally speaking, is you can't lose your house, right? Mm-hmm. So you can, if things go really, really, really bad, you just can declare some sort of bankruptcy or some things like that. And the worst case scenario, you'll lose everything else except for your primary residence, right? So for me, my primary residence is probably one of my most valuable assets. So my worst case scenario is me having a house that has plenty of equity in it. You know what I'm saying? Which I can bounce back from. So, so when you kind of know the laws and know the rules and know how things work, you can minimize your downside. So going in debt isn't scary to you because what's the worst that can happen and you can live with that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people need that step. I feel like a lot of people need that step honestly in life. I feel like people just look at money like how you just said. They don't really know the financial literacy behind money, so they feel like them taking that risk is like, why the hell would I do that? But in reality, I feel like if people knew how to do certain things, they wouldn't be afraid to approach it in a different perspective. So I feel like this shedding light on certain things, people really need to know, like, okay, debt to income. Okay, how much is this going to make back in the year? Is this a reasonable, investment you're going to make? Because, people buy, I'm not saying nothing wrong with buying luxury things, but like, do you really need that car right now? Like, do you really need that Rolex? Like, do you really need the simple things that's going to make people feel like you got money, but you going home, you sleeping at night crying because you got this $400 car note, and it's like, it's just something people really don't want to talk about. And I feel like people just got to, just put themselves out there more into the kids. So.
It's funny. I swear we really should do like a whole like podcast just about like material things and like what comes with that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like what comes with driving a luxury car? Like some people never did that before, right? So, you know what I'm saying? What happens when you pull up to the club with a Mercedes, when you have the big chain, when you're the one paying for everybody to get in VIP? Like, what is that life like? And do you really want to live that life? You know what I'm saying? Like, because people think they want that life. A lot of people think they want that life, but a lot comes with that lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? Of being with money. It's a lot to that, bro. You know what I'm saying? And I think that we need to talk about that because everybody keep pushing, get rich, get paid, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? But I just tell people, you really want to understand what comes along with that, man, because I've seen it. I've seen, a lot of that, and I've seen both sides of a lot of things. So we definitely need to talk about that on one of our podcasts.
Oh yeah, that's one for the books. Got to put that one in the future. But yeah, definitely. I feel like real estate going on. How do you guys feel about real estate at this point in time? Do you feel like it's about to go crazy? Like I've seen a lot of people been buying on real estate. So how do you feel like the turn of events about how COVID is opening things up? How do you feel like real estate about to impact a lot of things?
Yeah, so for me, I honestly don't know. I'd rather not share. I work for Chase, and I kind of see where it's going. And I work within the home lending area, but I'd rather not share. But I do. Once I know, Daniels, you want to tap into it. I would love to talk about, since you on the topic of real estate, like how our project, is going as well. But Dan, I'll let you chime in on that question.
I mean, it's a question that not a lot of. I mean, you can't really answer that question. I mean, you can. There's always analytics that show you where things are trending. But, we're kind of in unprecedented times. I mean, our economy is in a very different position than it's ever been in. So you really just don't know, because what's interesting is that, we have a generation of people coming up right now who don't necessarily want to own homes in the same way that people did in previous generations. Right. And that reality is going to really impact the housing market and how it looks. I think it's going to create more opportunities, but it's going to create opportunities for people who are investors, right? Because now, a lot of people are like, look, man, do I really want to buy a house, or do I want to just pay $2-3 a month for rent and that's it? Like some people don't want to fix air conditions, they don't want to, mow the grass, they don't want to do none of that stuff. This is not that type, this ain't that type of generation coming up. So. You got to think, like, you look at like your parents and people, a lot of people grew up in those days. They know how to fix stuff. They was taught that type of stuff in school. People don't know how to do that stuff nowadays. Right. You know how much it costs for somebody to come fix your toilet. Like, you paying for, like, some people just don't want to deal with that. They're like, look, man, let me just rent this house and let the landlord deal with it. And then I can move from place to place. Employment's changing. Back in the days, people used to work at the same place 30, 40 years. Now people work one place 2 years, they leave, go place. So when you're talking about buying a house, you know what I'm saying? Do you really want to buy a house when I'm only going to be here for a year or so, and then I'm on to the next move? You might not want to. So, just things like that are really going to impact the market.
For sure. I agree. It's a renter's market for sure.
For sure.
So yeah, man, so I know we told them about our project, and how things are going. I mean, we told them about our project last episode. What is it, a week now? Any updates on the property? We did some work with landscape. Anyone want to touch on, the upgrades that's coming to this beautiful mansion?
Yeah, shit. We about to go crazy with the house. Mr. Daniels, of course, he did another project recently, and then I walked in. I just felt like when I walked in that house he just recently did, it was a different vibe. Like, me and him first walked into the house the first time, and we looked at the house. Like, I looked at him like, okay, you have this on your hands. Okay, good job. Like, I'm about to see how this is about to turn out. And then he really brought the vision to life after he literally just told me how the house was going to come look out, and it actually looked like that, and to see the new, upgrades he did in his house, that was so, like, the most slightest things that people don't look at, you insert that into a house. And then what he was doing to this house, he's just telling us the same thing that we have to do, like add fixtures that people usually don't see, that people, gravitate towards, like putting a new kitchen counter set, but cutting it yourself, having someone cut it yourself, but having the latest models inside that. So also just looking at the kitchen, not the kitchen counters, but just the tiles on the floor. You walk into a new home or apartment nowadays, you just see how people, their apartment feels luxury. It feels like it's quality inside. And that's what the feeling he's about to go and turn it over to, the house we have. But all in all, it's about to be a getaway it's about to be a vacay home for a lot of college kids, even though for the school year. Like, I feel like whoever gets that house is going to be like, they about to run into like a gold mine, because I wish I had a house like that. My undergrad. I would have.
Man, I probably never would have graduated. You'd probably still be there hanging, king of the yard, but that's it.
A flag on the.
Right. Nah, I'm excited about the house though. I mean, it's a beautiful house. So outside of just, what we're going to do to the house, also what it's going to do to the community, because, when people see you renovating houses, it encourages them. Like the one I'm doing on Holton Street, it's 3 or 4 other people now, they renovating their houses and doing things like that because they saw what I was doing. Right. And I've had multiple people coming to me like, hey, can you renovate my house? How much do you charge? So, people just want to see other people investing, and then they want to do it too. And what that does is it brings up the property value of all the houses. So, in terms of protecting your investment, when you buy a house and you fix it up, it's a little bit risky because, like, what if nobody else does it, right? Yeah. But if you do it first and then everyone else starts doing it, bam, it starts bringing your value up, right? So it's a reward for taking that initial risk, right? So, with the house on Wells Street, I mean, it's a gorgeous house. You cannot get a house like that anymore. I mean, just even to build a house like that, just from scratch, a brick house like that, $500,000 easy. I mean, that's bare minimum to build a house with that square footage, with that level of finishes, $500,000 easy. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that might even be cheap. Depending on where it is. So, you're talking about a tremendous amount of value. Someone, just imagine someone, being in school, having a living room, a dining room, a sitting room, a movie theater, a computer lab, a study, a backyard, a front yard. Like, I mean, you're gonna have all types of everything. I mean, literally, this house is everything that you could ever even think of wanting, right? So you can, if your friends come in from town, they get crashed down in the basement, or there's a little guest room down there. If you're whatever comes up, you can do whatever you want in the house, right? You can have a lot of people over. You can chill, you can watch movies. You're right close to campus. I mean, it's just really the perfect house. If there was, I can't really think of any other way it could be better than what it is. I mean, it's literally the perfect house. So it's gonna be a wonderful renovation. It's gonna be very, very beautiful, and I'm sure people are gonna love living there for sure.
Yeah, going to drop pics and videos real soon after everything's done. So we will keep people updated about the process. But all in all, I believe that the time is cutting short. So I don't know if anybody has any last words before we cut off the stream.
Yeah, just super excited. That's all I can say. Just super excited.
Super excited. Just ready for more progress. The pictures, it's gonna happen fast. Like, that's what I tell people. Like you saw, like on Holden Street, it was like ugly. Then bam, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's like, dang, it went from ugly to wow. Just like that. So just like in a week or two, you're gonna be like, oh my goodness, that's that same house. So yeah, just get ready.
Yeah. The people we reached out to, of course, you guys know who you are. I sent some links out to some personal people, but I feel like the house is not going to be really on the market for that long. So I try to give first dabs to FAMU and FSU students, but we could hold out for so long. So all in all, appreciate you guys, Mr. Daniels, Adrian Fyne. You guys take care and have a great rest of the night.
All right.